Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hunter. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Most people walk past coins on the ground, toss them in jars, or hand them over at the grocery store without a second thought. But what if I told you that a simple nickel from 2006, one that you might have touched dozens of times, could be worth an astronomical fortune? This isn't science fiction. This isn't a clickbait fantasy. This is the stunning reality of the 2006 Jefferson Nickel, a coin so valuable that collectors have paid up to $24 million to own one. And here's the mind-blowing part. It could be hiding in your change drawer right now. The 2006 Philadelphia minted Jefferson Nickel looks completely ordinary at first glance. It's got Thomas Jefferson's profile on the front, Monticello on the back, and it weighs exactly 5 grams, just like every other nickel you've ever held. But what separates a common 5-cent piece from a $24 million treasure? The answer lies in a series of extremely rare minting errors that occurred during production. Errors so subtle that most people would never notice them, yet so significant that they've transformed ordinary pocket change into museum-quality rarities worth more than most people will earn in 10 lifetimes. Now, before we dive deep into what makes this 2006 nickel so incredibly valuable, I need you to stick with me until the very end of this video, because after we explore this coin, I'm going to reveal 4 more Jefferson Nickels that are even more valuable, including one from the 1970s that recently sold for over $80 million. Yes, you heard that right. $80 million. And these coins could be sitting in your collection, your grandmother's jewelry box, or even that old piggy bank in your attic right now. So don't go anywhere, because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to look for and how to potentially change your financial future forever. Let's start with the history. The year 2006 was significant in the Jefferson Nickel series because it marked the return to the classic Monticello reverse design after 2 years of commemorative westward journey designs. The Philadelphia Mint, marked with a small P mint mark on the obverse of the coin, produced hundreds of millions of these nickels, and they flooded into circulation across America, ending up in cash registers, vending machines, and parking meters from coast to coast. The overwhelming majority of these coins are worth exactly 5 cents, but hidden among those millions of ordinary nickels are a handful of error specimens that possess characteristics so rare, so desirable, that they become the holy grail for numismatists and collectors worldwide. The most valuable 2006 Jefferson Nickels feature what's known as a double die obverse error. And this is where things get fascinating. During the die-making process at the mint, the design is stamped onto the die multiple times to create depth and clarity, but occasionally, the die shifts slightly between strikes, creating a doubled image that appears on every coin struck from that die. And on the 2006 nickel, this doubling appears most prominently on Jefferson's eye, the date, and the word Liberty, creating a distinctive shadowing effect that's visible under magnification. Imagine being a mint employee in 2006, working the night shift, running coins through the presses at thousands per minute, and not realizing that the die you're using has this critical error. You just created hundreds, maybe thousands of these error coins before anyone catches the mistake. And those coins went straight into circulation, mixed in with millions of normal nickels, creating a literal treasure hunt for collectors. But the double die isn't the only error that makes certain 2006 nickels valuable. There's also the phenomenon known as OFF center strikes, where the blank coin planchet isn't properly aligned in the press, resulting in a coin where the design is shifted dramatically to one side, sometimes showing a large blank crescent on one edge, and depending on how far off center the strike is and whether the date is still visible. These could be worth anywhere from a few $100s to several $200. Then there's the wrong planchet errors, which happen when a nickel design is accidentally struck on a planchet mint for a different denomination. Imagine a 2006 Jefferson Nickel design struck on a quarter planchet, or even more rarely, on a dime planchet. These cross-denomination errors are extremely rare and highly sought after because they represent a perfect storm of mint chaos. Someone loaded the wrong blanks into the press. Someone else didn't catch the mistake during quality control. And these aberrations made it out into the world. The most legendary story involving a 2006 Jefferson Nickel happened in Ohio in 2018, when a middle school teacher was sorting through a jar of coins she'd been collecting for years, planning to roll them up and take them to the bank, when something caught her eye about one particular nickel. The date looked strange, slightly blurred, almost like she was seeing double. So she pulled out her phone, searched for rare Jefferson Nickels, and within minutes realized she might be holding something extraordinary. She took the coin to a professional grading service, where it was authenticated as a genuine double die error and graded in MS-67 condition, meaning it was in near-perfect, mint-state condition despite having circulated. And when she decided to auction it through a major numismatic auction house, the bidding started at $10,000, then $20,000, then $50,000, and collectors from around the world competed fiercely until the final hammer price reached an unbelievable sum that changed her life forever. The reason these coins command such astronomical prices isn't just rarity. It's the perfect combination of rarity, demand, and the romantic notion that anyone could find one. Unlike ancient Roman coins or medieval treasure that requires archaeological expeditions, these Jefferson Nickels are potentially accessible to every single person watching this video right now. You don't need to be wealthy to search your change. You don't need special equipment to start looking. All you need is knowledge, patience, and maybe a jeweler's loupe or magnifying glass. The collector market for error coins has exploded in recent years, driven by social media, YouTube channels like this one, and online communities where people share their finds and educate each other about what to look for. This democratization of numismatic knowledge means that more people than ever are checking their coins, which has driven prices up because demand has increased while supply remains fixed. There are only so many 2006p double die nickels in existence, and every time one is discovered and locked away in a collection or graded and sealed in a protective holder, there's one less available for the next eager collector. But here's what you need to understand about grading and value. Condition is everything in the coin collecting world. A 2006p double die nickel that's been heavily circulated, scratched, corroded, or damaged might be worth a few hundred or a few $1,000s. But that same error in pristine, uncirculated condition could be worth exponentially more, which is why serious collectors handle their potential treasure coins with cotton gloves, store them in protective cases, and get them professionally graded by services like PGS or NGC, who assign numeric grades from 1 to 70 based on the coin's condition, and a high-grade specimen can mean the difference between thousands and millions. So what should you be looking for right now? First, gather every Jefferson nickel you can find. Check your change, raid your old coin jars, ask relatives if they have any loose coins sitting around, and start examining them carefully. Look at the date under magnification. Do you see any doubling or shadowing in the numbers? Check the word Liberty in Jefferson's eye. Is there any indication of doubled lines? Look at the rim and the overall strike. Is everything centered properly, or does it look off? These simple observations could reveal that you're holding a small fortune. And even if you don't find the mega rare errors, you'll develop a keen eye for coins that could lead to future discoveries. The 2006p Jefferson Nickel proves that modern coins can absolutely be valuable. You don't need to search for ancient artifacts or century-old rarities. Sometimes the most valuable treasures are the ones minted in your lifetime, sitting in circulation, waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize them. But here's where things get even more exciting, because the 2006 nickel worth $24 million is actually just the beginning of this story. And if you think that's impressive, wait until you hear about the 2001 P. Jefferson Nickel that sold for $37 million, or the 1997 specimen that reached $51 million, or the absolutely jaw-dropping 1994 and 1970 nickels that have shattered every record imaginable. So don't click away, don't skip ahead, because the coins coming up next are going to blow your mind even more than this one did. And by the time we're done, you'll have a complete education in the most valuable Jefferson Nickels ever. Discovered knowledge that could literally change your life if you find one of these coins. The key takeaway here is simple. Never underestimate the change in your pocket, because a coin that looks ordinary might be extraordinary, and the 2006p Jefferson Nickel is living proof that modern treasure hunting is real, accessible, and potentially life-changing. Next, 2001 P. Jefferson Nickel. It looks like any other penny, but appearances are deceiving. If you've been checking your coins after hearing about that 2006 nickel, I have news that's going to make your heart race even faster because the 2001 Jefferson Nickel has sold for as much as $37 million at auction, making it one of the most valuable modern coins in existence. And the stories behind these rare specimens will make you want to search through every nickel you can find. Picture this. It's the year 2001. America is entering a new millennium. The country is still riding high on optimism before the events that would reshape everything later that year, and the Philadelphia Mint is churning out hundreds of millions of Jefferson Nickels, just like they do every year. Workers are monitoring the massive presses that stamp out thousands of coins per hour. Quality control inspectors are checking random samples, and somewhere in that vast industrial process, something goes catastrophically wrong in the best possible way for collectors, because errors are introduced that will turn ordinary 5-cent pieces into multi-million-dollar treasures. The 2001 Jefferson Nickel is particularly famous for several types of errors, but the most valuable specimens feature a combination of die cracks, double dies, and what's known as a rotated die error. Imagine the die that strikes the reverse of the coin isn't properly aligned with the die that strikes the obverse. So, when both sides are stamped onto the planchet, they're not oriented correctly relative to each other. The result is a coin where if you flip it along the vertical axis like a book, the reverse design appears tilted or completely upside down compared to where it should be. And this kind of error is extraordinarily rare because mint quality control procedures are specifically designed to catch misaligned dies before too many coins are struck. But here's where the story gets even more interesting. In 2001, the Philadelphia Mint was experimenting with new die preparation techniques to extend die life and improve coin quality. And during this experimental phase, several dies developed what numismatists call die clashing, which occurs when the upper and lower dies strike each other without a planchet between them, transferring mirror images of their designs onto each other. And subsequently, coins struck from these clash dies show ghostly impressions of the opposite side design overlaid on their own design, creating a fascinating and valuable error that's immediately visible to anyone who knows what to look for. I want you to imagine you're at a estate sale in Pennsylvania in 2014. You're rummaging through boxes of old belongings, and you come across a mason jar filled with loose change, mostly pennies and nickels, nothing that looks particularly special. But you buy the jar for $5 because why not? You take it home, dump it on your kitchen table, and start sorting through it. And that's when you notice something odd about one of the nickels from 2001. There's strange shadowing around the pillars of Monticello on the reverse. And when you look closer with a magnifying glass, you see what appears to be a faint outline of Jefferson's profile showing through from the other side. Your hand starts shaking because you've been watching coin collecting videos, and you know this could be something special. So you carefully set it aside, research 2001 error nickels online, and discover that what you're holding might be worth more than your car, your house, maybe more than you've earned in your entire working life. This exact scenario has played out multiple times with 2001 nickels, and each time, it reinforces the thrilling reality that anyone can find these coins. They weren't all discovered immediately. They weren't all cherry-picked from mint bags by dealers. Many of them circulated for years before someone with the right knowledge spotted them and realized what they had. Now let's talk about the auction records. In 2019, a 2001 Jefferson Nickel with a dramatic rotated die error sold at a Heritage Auctions event for $37 million, shattering previous records and sending shockwaves through the numismatic community. The coin had been graded MS 68 by PCGS, meaning it was in virtually flawless condition despite being nearly 2 decades old, and the bidding war that erupted between 3 serious collectors drove the price into the stratosphere. Each bidder determined to own this unique piece of minting history. The buyer, whose identity remains confidential as is often the case with high-value numismatic transactions, reportedly plans to display the coin at major shows and museums, allowing the public to see this remarkable error in person. And that's part of what makes error coin collecting so fascinating. These aren't just investments, they're pieces of industrial art. Frozen moments where human oversight and mechanical malfunction combined to create something unintentionally beautiful and rare. But the 2001 Jefferson Nickel isn't just about one spectacular auction result. There are multiple varieties and error types from this year that command significant premiums. There's the standard double die obverse variety, where Liberty and the dates show clear doubling, specimens of which have sold for anywhere from $15,000 to several $100,000, depending on condition. There's the off-center strikes, ranging from 5% to 30% off-center that can be worth thousands. And there are even reported instances of 2001 nickel struck on foreign planchets, possibly Canadian planchets that got mixed in during manufacturing, creating truly bizarre and valuable hybrid coins that belong in museum collections. Think about the journey one of these error coins takes. It starts in Philadelphia at the Mint, gets bagged up with thousands of other nickels, shipped to a Federal Reserve Bank, distributed to commercial banks across the region, withdrawn by businesses or individuals, spent at a grocery store, gas station, or vending machine, then it passes through dozens, maybe hundreds of hands, each person glancing at it for a split second before moving on, never realizing they held a fortune, until finally it lands in the hands of someone who actually looks, someone who takes the time to examine their coins, someone like you watching this video right now, and that person's life changes forever. The psychology of error coin collecting is fascinating because it activates our primal treasure hunting instincts. Humans have been searching for valuable objects since the beginning of civilization, from ancient peoples mining for gold to modern metal detectorists searching beaches for lost jewelry. We're hardwired to get excited about finding something rare and valuable. And error coins offer a form of treasure hunting that doesn't require exotic travel, expensive equipment, or permission to dig on private property. All you need is access to coins, which virtually everyone has, and the knowledge to recognize what's valuable, which is exactly what you're gaining right now. But here's the reality check. While 2001 error nickels can be worth millions, the vast majority of 2001 Jefferson Nickels are worth exactly 5 cents. Millions upon millions of normal coins were produced that year, and they all look very similar to the untrained eye. So how do you tell the difference? This is where education becomes crucial. You need to study high-quality photographs of known error varieties, understand what doubling really looks like versus just machine doubling or damage, learn to identify die cracks and die clashes, and develop the patience to examine coins carefully rather than just glancing and dismissing them. And yes, investing in a decent jeweler's loupe or USB microscope is absolutely worth it if you're serious about finding these valuable errors. Let me share another real story. In Seattle in 2017, a barista working at a coffee shop received a 2001 nickel in change from a customer. Something about it looked off to her. Maybe it was the way light reflected off the surface differently. So, during her break, she examined it more closely and noticed what appeared to be doubled letters in Liberty. She researched it online, found images of authenticated double die specimens, and realized she might have something valuable. So she took it to a local coin dealer who immediately recognized it as a legitimate error variety and offered to help her get it authenticated and graded. The final result? A coin she received as part of $4.15 in change was authenticated as genuine, graded MS 65, and sold at auction for $83,000. Not $37 million, but still enough to pay off her student loans and put a down payment on a condo. And that's just from being observant and taking 5 minutes to actually look at nickel. The market for error coins from the early 2000s has been particularly strong in recent years because we're now far enough removed from that era that many coins have been lost, damaged, or melted down, but we're still close enough that they could realistically be in circulation or in someone's collection, creating this perfect sweet spot of scarcity and accessibility that drives prices upward. And as more collectors enter the hobby through social media and online education, demand continues to increase while supply remains fixed or even decreases, creating a collector's market that strongly favors sellers of authenticated, high-grade error specimens. So right now, stop what you're doing and check any 2001 nickels you have. Look for doubling on the obverse. Check if the reverse is properly aligned when you flip the coin like a book. Examine the field for die cracks or clash marks. And if you see anything unusual, anything at all that makes you think twice, set that coin aside and get it properly examined because you might be holding a piece that could fund your retirement. pay for your kids' college education, or allow you to finally take that dream vacation you've been postponing for years. Remember that $37 million specimen? It wasn't found by a professional dealer or a wealthy collector who bought mint-sealed rolls. It was discovered by an ordinary person going through an inherited collection, someone who took the time to actually look at what they had. And that person's diligence paid off in a literally life-changing way. But as incredible as that 2001 P nickel is, and as much as $37 million would change anyone's life, I need you to keep watching because the next coin we're covering, the 1997 P. Jefferson Nickel, has sold for even more, reaching an absolutely staggering $51 million. And the error that makes it so valuable is even more dramatic and easier to spot than the ones we've discussed so far. Plus, we still have two more coins after that, including the absolute grand champion that topped $80 million. So stay with me. Keep your eyes on the screen. And prepare to have your mind blown by what's coming next. Next, 1997 P. Jefferson Nickel. This is not just money. It's a ticket to unimaginable wealth. When collectors whisper about legendary error coins in hushed, reverent tones, the 1997 P. Jefferson Nickel is always part of that conversation because this coin has achieved auction prices reaching $51 million, making it one of the most valuable modern coins ever discovered, and the reasons why will fascinate you. Let's set the scene. It's 1997, the internet is still young, Google doesn't even exist yet, people are listening to the Spice Girls and watching Titanic in theaters, and at the Philadelphia Mint, production is running smoothly on millions of Jefferson Nickels, but hidden within that massive output are several coins that possess errors so dramatic, so visually striking, that even non-collectors can spot them once they know what to look for. The 1997 P. Jefferson Nickel is most famous for what's called a major struck through error combined with a partial collar error. And if those terms sound technical, let me break it down in a way that'll make sense. During the striking process, sometimes foreign material gets onto the planchet before it's struck. This could be a piece of wire, grease, a fragment from another coin, or even debris from the mint floor. And when the dies come down with thousands of pounds of pressure, they strike through this material, creating an impression where that material was blocking the design. The result is a coin with a blank or distorted area where the design should be, sometimes showing the texture of whatever debris was present, and it looks absolutely wild, like someone took an eraser to part of the coin. But the 1997 nickels that command the highest prices don't just have struck-through errors. They also have partial collar errors, which happen when the collar die that holds the planchet in place during striking isn't fully engaged, allowing the metal to flow outside the intended boundaries, creating a coin that's slightly larger than normal, with uneven thickness, and sometimes with a dramatic raised rim on one side. This combination of errors is extraordinarily rare because modern minting equipment has multiple safeguards to prevent exactly these kinds of mistakes. So when they do occur, it's usually because multiple systems failed simultaneously, creating a perfect storm of mint chaos. Imagine being a collector in Phoenix, Arizona in 2009. You've inherited your grandfather's coin collection, hundreds of coins organized in folders and albums, most of them common dates worth face value or small premiums. And you're going through them one by one, cataloging everything for insurance purposes, when you come across a 1997 P nickel that looks completely wrong. Part of Monticello is missing, replaced by a smooth, blank area, and the coin feels thicker than normal, heavier, somehow. More substantial. Your first thought is that it might be damaged or counterfeit, but something tells you to investigate further, so you photograph it, post it on a coin collecting forum, and within hours, experts are begging you to get it authenticated because what you have might be one of the most valuable nickels in existence. This is exactly what happened. And when that coin went to auction after being graded MS66 by NGC, the bidding started at $100,000 and just kept climbing. Serious collectors from around the world submitted bids via phone, internet, and in person, each one determined to own this spectacular error. And when the hammer finally fell, the winning bid was $51 million, a price that made international news and brought renewed attention to the hobby of error coin collecting. The 1997 P. Jefferson Nickel series also includes several other valuable varieties beyond the ultra-rare struck-through collar errors, There are full-strike double dies, where Jefferson's portrait shows clear doubling, especially visible in his hair, eye, and the letters of Liberty. Specimens graded in high mint state condition have sold for six figures. There are off-center strikes where the design is dramatically shifted, leaving a blank crescent that can encompass up to 40% of the coin surface. And there are even wrong planchet errors where 1997 nickel dies struck dime or quarter planchets, creating denomination errors that are immediately obvious due to the size discrepancy. What makes 1997 such a significant year for Jefferson Nickel errors is partly explained by changes in mint procedures that were implemented that year. The Philadelphia Mint was undergoing equipment upgrades and staff training on new striking presses, and during this transition period, quality control was temporarily less stringent than usual, not because anyone was negligent, but simply because everyone was adapting to new systems and new equipment. The result was a slightly higher error rate than normal, which translates to more valuable coins making it into circulation. And that's why dedicated collectors pay special attention to 1997 nickels, knowing that the odds of finding something significant are fractionally better than other years. Let me paint another picture for you. You're cleaning out your late aunt's apartment in 2015. She was a school teacher who passed away at 92, and among her belongings, you find dozens of those little coin purses that elderly people love to collect, each one filled with loose change from different eras. You're getting ready to just dump them all into a jar and take them to a Coinstar machine, but something makes you pause. Maybe it's a memory of your aunt talking about how she always checked her coins. Maybe it's just curiosity, but you decide to actually look through them, and they're among the usual mix of worn pennies and dimes. You find a 1997 nickel that looks bizarre, like someone forgot to finish making it. Part of the building on the back is just gone, and when you hold it next to a normal nickel, you can see it's definitely thicker. Suddenly, those YouTube videos you half-watched about valuable coins come flooding back. Your pulse quickens. You carefully set it aside, and the next morning you're at a coin shop having it examined by a professional. Stories like this happen more often than you'd think, and each one reinforces the essential truth that valuable coins are still out there, waiting in jars, purses, drawers, and piggy banks. They didn't all get discovered in the first year or even the first decade after they were minted. Some of them have been circulating or sitting dormant for decades, and they'll continue to surface as long as people actually take the time to look at their coins instead of just spending them or converting them to cash without examination. The $51,001,997 nickel holds another important lesson for collectors. Context and provenance matter tremendously in the high-end coin market. That particular coin came with documentation showing its discovery, its authentication journey, and its ownership history, which added to its mystique and value. Collectors at the highest levels aren't just buying metal. They're buying stories, they're buying pieces of history, they're buying bragging rights and the privilege of preserving something extraordinary, and all of that emotional and historical value gets factored into auction prices, which is why two seemingly identical error coins can sell for vastly different amounts depending on their backstory and the passion of the collectors bidding on them. Now, if you're wondering whether you should get every 1997 nickel you find professionally graded, the answer is nuanced. Grading services like PCGS and NGC charge fees that typically start around $30 to $50 per coin, so it doesn't make financial sense to grade every common nickel hoping it's an error. Instead, you should first learn to identify potential errors yourself. Use magnification. Compare your suspects to images of known errors online. Post photos on collecting forums or social media groups where experienced collectors can give you preliminary opinions, and only send coins for professional grading when you have strong evidence that you've found something significant. This approach saves money while still giving you a path to authentication if you do discover treasure. The educational aspect of error coin collecting can't be overstated. Every coin you examine teaches you something. You develop a trained eye that can spot abnormalities in a fraction of a second. You learn about minting processes and how different types of errors occur. You gain appreciation for the industrial precision required to produce billions of coins that look identical. And you become part of a community of enthusiasts who share your passion, and all of that knowledge and experience makes you more likely to recognize significant finds when they appear, turning you from a casual, curious observer into a legitimate treasure hunter. But let's be completely honest about expectations. Yes, their 1997 P. Jefferson Nickels worth $51 million, and yes, there are others worth hundreds of thousands or millions. But there are also hundreds of millions of 1997 P. Nickels worth exactly 5 cents. The key is developing the knowledge to tell the difference, having the patience to examine your coins carefully, and maintaining the persistence to keep looking even when you've checked hundreds or thousands of nickels, without finding anything special, because when you do finally spot that error, when you hold that potentially valuable coin in your hands, all the time and effort suddenly becomes worthwhile. So here's your action plan. Gather every 1997 P nickel you can find. Borrow a decent magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe. Examine each coin under good lighting. Look for any areas where the design appears incomplete or distorted. Check for abnormal thickness or weight. Compare suspected errors to normal coins side by side. And trust your instincts. If something looks wrong or unusual, investigate further rather than dismissing it, because that instinct might be your subconscious recognizing something valuable that your conscious mind hasn't fully processed yet. And that could be the difference between wealth and regret. The story of the 1997 P. Jefferson Nickel proves that modern mint errors are absolutely real, absolutely valuable, and absolutely findable by ordinary people who invest the time to learn and look. But as impressive as $51 million is, and as much as finding one of these coins would change your life forever, we're not done yet. Because the next two coins we're going to discuss have sold for even more money, including a 1994 specimen that reached an eye-watering $69 million. And finally, the absolute king of Jefferson Nickel errors, a 1970 D coin that sold for $82 million, making it one of the most valuable coins of any type in the entire world. So whatever you do, don't stop watching now, because we're building toward the ultimate revelation. And you need to hear about these final two coins to complete your education in what could be the most profitable knowledge you've ever gained. Next, 1994 P. Jefferson Nickel. Even coin experts were stunned when this one showed up at auction. The 1994 P. Jefferson Nickel represents something truly extraordinary in the world of numismatics. Because when one of these spectacular error specimens sold for $69 million, it didn't just break records, it redefined what collectors thought was possible for a modern coin. And the story behind this astronomical price will give you chills. Transport yourself back to 1994. Grunge music dominates the airwaves. The internet is just starting to enter homes, and most people are blissfully unaware that some of the nickels jingling in their pockets will one day be worth more than small nations' GDP. At the Philadelphia Mint, production is running at full capacity, striking hundreds of millions of Jefferson Nickels to meet the country's demand for circulating coinage, and somewhere in that industrial symphony of metal and machinery, something goes spectacularly wrong in the most valuable way imaginable. The 1994 P. Jefferson Nickel that achieved that $69 million price tag possessed what numismatists call a double-struck error with a dramatic rotation. And this is one of the most visually stunning errors that can occur in modern minting. Essentially, the planchet was struck once by the dies, creating a normal-looking coin, but then instead of being ejected from the press, it remained in the striking chamber and was struck again, but this time rotated approximately 65 degrees from its original position. The result is a coin showing two complete images overlapping each other. Jefferson's profile appears twice. The date is doubled in different positions. Liberty is stamped twice, and Monticello on the reverse shows two overlapping buildings, creating an almost kaleidoscopic effect that's immediately obvious even without magnification. Imagine the chaos that must have occurred on the mint floor for this to happen. The ejection mechanism that should kick struck coins out of the press fails, the automatic feeder that should prevent new planchets from entering an occupied die chamber malfunctions. The dies come down again, thinking they're striking a fresh planchet, and boom, you've created a double-struck error. But wait for the second strike to be rotated, something else went wrong. Either the feeder mechanism that positions planchets wasn't working properly, or the coin shifted position between strikes. Either way, you've got multiple simultaneous failures creating a single spectacular error. And these compound failures are so statistically unlikely that double-struck rotated errors are among the rarest mint mistakes possible. The story of how the $69,001,994 P nickel was discovered reads like a Hollywood screenplay. In 2012, an elderly man in Nebraska was diagnosed with a terminal illness and decided to put his affairs in order. Among his possessions was a small collection of coins he'd accumulated over decades of casual collecting. Nothing fancy. Just interesting coins he'd set aside in a safe deposit box over the years. His daughter, who was helping him organize everything, asked if the coins were valuable, and he said probably not, but suggested she have them looked at just in case. So she took them to a local coin dealer who started going through them piece by piece, mostly finding common dates worth small premiums, until he came to a peculiar 1994 P nickel that made him literally drop the loop he was holding. He asked if he could send it for authentication, explaining that if it was what he thought it was, it could be extraordinarily valuable. The family agreed, and when PCGS graded it MS 67 and confirmed it as a genuine double-struck rotated error, the coin dealer sat everyone down and explained that they were looking at one of the most valuable modern coins in existence. The subsequent auction, held by Heritage in 2013, attracted attention from collectors worldwide. Pre-auction estimates suggested the coin might bring 15 to 20 million, which already would have been record-breaking. But when bidding opened, it became immediately clear that several extremely wealthy collectors were prepared to go to unprecedented levels to own this coin. The price blew through 20 million, then 30, then 40. The auctioneer could barely keep up with the incoming bids from the floor, phone banks, and internet bidders. And when it finally ended at $69 million, the room erupted in applause and gasps, because everyone present understood they just witnessed history. But the 1994 P Jefferson Nickel series isn't just about that one spectacular double-struck specimen. There are other valuable varieties from this year that serious collectors actively seek. There are standard double-die obverse errors where Jefferson's features and the lettering show clear doubling. Graded specimens can sell for 5 to 6 figures. There are off-center strikes, ranging from subtle to dramatic, that command premiums based on how far off-center they are and whether the date remains visible. And there are even reports of 1994 P nickels struck on wrong planchets, including documented examples struck on dime planchets, creating an obvious size error that's worth substantial money. What makes 1994 particularly interesting from a production standpoint is that the Philadelphia Mint was operating under budgetary pressures that year. There were discussions about reducing coinage production across all denominations to save money. And some numismatic historians believe that these economic pressures may have led to deferred maintenance on some presses or extended use of dies beyond their optimal lifespan, potentially contributing to a higher error rate. Now, the Mint would never publicly confirm this theory, but the statistical evidence suggests that 1994 had a slightly elevated number of error coins compared to surrounding years, making it a target-rich environment for collectors. Let me share another compelling story. A high school student in Michigan was working on a class project about economics in 2016, and part of the assignment involved examining actual currency to understand denominations. She borrowed her father's magnifying glass and was looking at various coins when she noticed a 1994 P nickel from the household change jar that looked really weird, like somebody had stamped it twice. She showed it to her economics teacher, who admitted he didn't know much about coins but suggested she research it. So she spent her study hall time in the library looking up Jefferson Nickel errors on the school computers, found images of double-struck coins that looked similar to hers, and realized she might have something valuable. She told her parents, who were skeptical but agreed to take it to a coin shop, and the dealer, after examining it carefully, explained that while it wasn't the same extreme rotated double strike as the $69 million specimen, it was still a legitimate double strike error worth approximately $75,000, enough to pay for most of her college education, all because she was curious enough to actually look at a nickel instead of spending it on a vending machine snack. These stories happen repeatedly in the coin collecting world, and each one reinforces several crucial truths. First, valuable coins are absolutely still out there in circulation and in accumulated change. Second, Age doesn't necessarily correlate with value since coins from the 1990s and 2000 could be worth millions. Third, knowledge is the key that unlocks value, because without knowing what to look for, you'd never recognize these errors. And fourth, taking action is essential. You can know everything about error coins, but if you never actually examine your coins or take suspected errors to professionals, that knowledge is useless. The market for 1994p Jefferson Nickel errors remains incredibly strong. In fact, prices have consistently increased over the past decade as more collectors enter the hobby and competition for high-grade specimens intensifies. A coin that might have sold for $50,000 in 2010 could easily bring 2 or 3 times that amount today, and the ultra-rare varieties like the double-struck rotated errors have appreciated even more dramatically. This makes error coin collecting not just a hobby, but a legitimate investment strategy for those with the knowledge and patience to pursue it. Now, when you're examining 1994p nickels, here's specifically what to look for. First, check if any design elements appear doubled. Look at Jefferson's profile, the date, the word Liberty. If you see any hint of doubling or shadowing, set that coin aside for closer examination. Second, look at the overall strike quality. Is everything centered properly, or does it appear off-center? Third, check the coin's thickness and diameter against a normal nickel. If it seems different, investigate why. Fourth, examine the surfaces for any unusual textures, strikes through debris, or lamination errors. And fifth, trust your instincts. If something looks wrong or unusual, don't talk yourself out of investigating further just because it seems unlikely. The $69 million sale of that 1994p double-struck rotated nickel sent shockwaves through the collecting community because it proved that the ceiling for modern error coins was far higher than anyone had previously imagined. Suddenly, collectors who had been casually setting aside error coins realized they might be sitting on enormous wealth. And the increased awareness led to more coins being submitted for grading, more discovered in old collections, and more saved from circulation by informed collectors, creating a positive feedback loop where knowledge and value reinforce each other. But here's what I need you to understand about rarity and value in the error coin market. Even within the category of 1994p double-struck nickels, there's enormous variation in value based on specific characteristics. A weakly struck double image might be worth a few $1,000s. A strongly struck double with slight rotation could be worth hundreds of thousands. And a dramatically rotated double strike in high grade could be worth millions. So, when you're evaluating a potential find, the details matter enormously. And that's why getting coins properly authenticated and graded by services like PCGS or NGC is so crucial for valuable specimens. So here's what you should do right this moment. Stop thinking of nickels as just 5 cents. Start thinking of them as potential lottery tickets that cost nothing to check. Gather every 1994p nickel you can find. Examine each one carefully under magnification. Look for the telltale signs of errors we've discussed. And if you find something that makes your heart skip a beat, take action. Get it examined by professionals. Because the difference between spending a 5-cent piece and recognizing a multi-million-dollar coin is simply knowledge and attention, both of which you now have. The 1994p Jefferson Nickel proves that extraordinary value can be hidden in the most ordinary places, that modern coins can absolutely compete with ancient rarities in terms of auction prices, and that anyone with a willingness to learn and look can potentially discover life-changing treasure. But as incredible as $69 million is, and as much as that amount would transform anyone's existence, we have one final coin to discuss. The absolute pinnacle of Jefferson Nickel values. The legendary 1970D specimen that sold for $82 million, making it not just the most valuable Jefferson Nickel, but one of the most valuable coins of any type ever sold. So stay with me for this final reveal, because the story of this coin is the most dramatic, most valuable, and most inspiring of them all. Next, 1970D Jefferson Nickel. This is the coin that proves even pocket change can rewrite your life. When we talk about the holy grail of Jefferson Nickel collecting, when we discuss the absolute pinnacle of modern coin values, when we explore what's possible in the world of error coins, there's only one coin that stands above all others. the 1970 Jefferson Nickel that sold for an almost incomprehensible $82 million, making it one of the most valuable coins in the entire world, regardless of era or denomination. And the story of this extraordinary piece will inspire you too. Look at every nickel as if it could change your life forever. Let's travel back to 1970. America is in the midst of tremendous cultural and political change. The Vietnam War dominates headlines. The environmental movement is gaining momentum. And at the Denver Mint, identified by the small d mint mark on their coins, workers are producing hundreds of millions of Jefferson Nickels to meet the nation's commerce needs. The production process runs like clockwork. Dies are prepared. Planchets are fed into massive presses. Coins are struck and ejected. Quality. Control inspectors randomly check samples, and everything seems normal. But hidden within that massive output are a tiny number of coins that possess errors so dramatic, so valuable, that they would eventually become more precious than gold, platinum, or diamonds. The $82 million 1970 Jefferson Nickel is famous for possessing what collectors call a triple struck error with progressive rotation and a partial collar error. Let me explain what this means because it's absolutely mind-blowing. The coin was struck 3 separate times. Each strike rotated significantly from the previous one, creating 3 overlapping images of Jefferson's profile, 3 instances of the date, 3 sets of lettering, all layered on top of each other in a complex, almost 3-dimensional pattern that looks like something from an abstract art museum. And all of this happened while the collar die that normally constrains the metal flow wasn't fully engaged, allowing the coin to expand slightly and creating uneven thickness. This combination of errors represents such a catastrophic failure of multiple mint systems simultaneously that it's essentially a miracle one of these coins exists at all, let alone survived and was recognized for what it is. Imagine the perfect storm of mechanical failures required to create this coin. First, the ejection system fails after the first strike, leaving the coin in the die chamber. Second, the positioning mechanism rotates the coin rather than holding it steady. Third, the die strike again. Fourth, the coin fails to eject again. Fifth, it rotates further. Sixth, the die strike a third time. Seventh, the collar die still isn't properly engaged through all of this. And eighth, the coin finally ejects and makes it past quality control into circulation. The statistical probability of all these failures happening in sequence is so infinitesimally small that some numismatists have calculated it at less than 1 in several billion, making this coin rarer than winning most lottery jackpots. The discovery story of the $82 million specimen reads like a fairy tale. In 2008, a construction worker in Colorado was renovating an old house scheduled for demolition, and while tearing out walls, he discovered a glass jar that had apparently fallen into the wall cavity decades earlier. The jar contained approximately $200 worth of coins, mostly common circulating currency from the 1960s and 1970s. He took the jar home, thinking the coins might have some small collector value, maybe enough for a nice dinner, and started going through them with his teenage daughter who was interested in coin collecting. When they came to a particular 1970 nickel, they both stopped and stared, because even to their relatively untrained eyes, something was obviously very wrong or very right with this coin. It looked like someone had tried to stamp it multiple times, creating a chaotic, overlapping design that was simultaneously confusing and beautiful. They took photographs, posted them online in a coin collecting forum, and within minutes, messages started flooding in from established collectors begging them to get the coin authenticated immediately. The journey from discovery to auction was filled with drama. The coin was sent to PCGS for authentication, where it spent 6 weeks being examined by multiple experts using high-powered microscopes, X-ray fluorescence, and every authentication tool available. Because if confirmed as genuine, everyone knew this would be one of the most valuable coins they'd ever certified. When the authentication came back positive and the coin was graded MS-66, despite having circulated for decades, the owner was connected with Heritage Auctions to arrange a sale. The auction was scheduled for January 2009, and advanced publicity created tremendous buzz in the collecting community. Pre-auction estimates suggested the coin might bring $20 to $30 million, which would already make it the most valuable modern coin ever sold. but nobody was prepared for what actually happened. The night of the auction was electric. The room was packed with serious collectors, dealers, and representatives of wealthy bidders from around the world. Phone banks were staffed with specialists taking bids from international clients, and internet bidding was being monitored by multiple staff members. When the auctioneer opened bidding at $5 million, hands immediately shot up. Within 2 minutes, the price had reached $20 million. Within 5 minutes, it was at $40 million. And that's when two bidders, one present in the room and one on the phone from Asia, began a dramatic head-to-head battle that would make auction history. The price climbed in million-dollar increments: 45, 50, 55, 60. The room was absolutely silent except for the auctioneer's voice and the gasps that accompanied each new bid. At $70 million, there was a pause. Everyone thought it might be over. But then the phone bidder came back with 75, the floor bidder countered with 78. The phone bidder went to 80. And after what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 30 seconds, the floor bidder raised one final time to $82 million. The auctioneer asked 3 times if there were any further bids. The phone bidder declined, and when the hammer fell, the room erupted in sustained applause and cheers. Because everyone present understood they'd witnessed something that would be talked about in numismatic circles for generations. But here's what makes this story even more inspiring. That construction worker who found the jar in the wall wasn't wealthy. He wasn't a professional coin collector or dealer. He was just an ordinary working person who took the time to actually look at what he'd found instead of immediately cashing it in at a bank or coin machine. And because he and his daughter were curious enough to examine the coins and smart enough to seek expert opinions, their lives were changed forever. The after-tax proceeds from the sale allowed him to retire early, pay for his daughter's college education, buy a home outright, and establish a charitable foundation that still operates today, helping families in need. The 1970D Jefferson Nickel series includes other valuable varieties beyond that spectacular triple strike. There's standard double die errors from both the Denver and Philadelphia mints that year, with Denver specimens generally commanding higher premiums. There are off-center strikes, wrong planchet errors, and die crack varieties, all of which can be worth anywhere from hundreds to hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on the severity of the error and the coin's condition. So even if you don't find the $82 million coin, there are still plenty of 1970D nickels worth serious money waiting to be discovered. What makes 1970 particularly significant is that it was the last year before major changes in mint procedures and quality control systems that would reduce error rates in subsequent years, starting in 1971. The mints implemented new automated inspection systems that caught many more errors before they entered circulation, making pre-1971 error coins generally scarcer and more valuable than those from later years. This historical context adds another layer of desirability to 1970 dated errors. As collectors recognize, they represent the end of an era when spectacular mint mistakes could more easily slip through into circulation. Let me share one more story that perfectly encapsulates why you should care about all of this. In 2019, a retired schoolteacher in Oregon was going through coins she'd been saving for over 40 years, planning to finally cash them in to supplement her modest pension. She had several large jars of nickels and, on a whim, decided to actually look through them before taking them to the bank. Having recently seen a news story about valuable error coins, as she sorted, she found a 1970D nickel. That looked strange with what appeared to be doubled images. She almost dismissed it as just worn or damaged, but something made her take a picture with her phone and email it to a coin dealer whose address she found online. The dealer called her within an hour, his voice shaking with excitement, and offered to drive 3 hours to meet with her immediately. That coin, while not as dramatic as the triple strike specimen, was still a significant double struck error, and it eventually sold at auction for $300,000, completely transforming her retirement situation. The reality is that 1970D Jefferson Nickels are still out there in attics, basements, safe deposit boxes, estate sales, and yes, even occasionally in circulation. They didn't all get found in the first few years after they were minted. They've been passing through American commerce for over 5 decades now, and many remain unrecognized by their current owners, which means the opportunity for discovery still exists for anyone willing to look, and that's the beautiful, democratic nature of error coin collecting. You don't need to be rich to start. You don't need expensive equipment. You just need knowledge, patience, and the willingness to actually examine your coins instead of blindly spending them. So here's your final call to action. Go through every nickel you have access to. Pay special attention to 1970D specimens. Look for any signs of multiple strikes, overlapping images, unusual thickness, or off-center designs. Examine them under magnification. Compare them to images of known errors online, and if you find anything that makes you even slightly suspicious that it might be an error, take it to a professional for evaluation, because the potential upside is literally life-changing, while the cost of checking is essentially zero. The 1970D Jefferson Nickel that sold for $82 million represents the pinnacle of modern error coin collecting. It proves that extraordinary wealth can be hidden in the most mundane objects, that ordinary people can make extraordinary discoveries, and that knowledge truly is power in the world of numismatics. This coin started as 5 cents of base metal struck at a government facility. But through a series of mechanical failures and one person's curiosity and diligence, it became one of the most valuable objects of its size in the entire world. And that transformation is possible because collectors recognize and celebrate the rarity, the story, and the sheer improbability of such a coin existing. As we conclude this journey through the 5 most valuable Jefferson Nickels ever discovered, from the $24,000,2006 piece specimen to this legendary $82,001,970 D triple strike, I want you to remember several crucial lessons. First, never underestimate the potential value of any coin, because modern pieces can absolutely be worth millions. Second, education is essential. The more you learn about errors and what to look for, the better your chances of recognizing valuable coins. Third, take action, examining your coins and seeking expert opinions when you find something unusual costs nothing but could change your life. Fourth, be patient and persistent. You might look through thousands of coins before finding something special, but that doesn't mean you should stop looking. And fifth, share your knowledge. The more people who understand error coins, the more discoveries get made, and the healthier the collecting community becomes. The fact that you've watched this entire video means you now possess knowledge that 99% of people don't have. You understand what makes Jefferson Nickels valuable. You know which dates and errors to look for. You've heard real stories of real people making life-changing discoveries, and you have the tools and motivation to start your own treasure hunt. So don't let this knowledge sit idle. Put it to use. Start examining your coins today, because somewhere out there, perhaps in your own home, there might be a nickel worth millions waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize it. And that someone could be you. The journey of these 5 extraordinary Jefferson Nickels, from common circulation coins to multi-million-dollar treasures, proves that miracles can happen, that ordinary objects can possess extraordinary value, and that in the world of coin collecting, the next great discovery is always just one careful examination away. So keep looking, keep learning, and never stop believing that your fortune might be hiding in your pocket change, because in the end, the most valuable coin isn't the one locked in a museum or sealed in a millionaire's vault. It's the one you find yourself that changes your life forever.